Hayao Miyazaki is one of the most unique artists of all time. I grew up watching Walt Disney classic films and went on there to work for many years. But when I first saw Studio Ghibli film, it made me feel something I've never felt before. And the more Ghibli films I watched, the more I began to notice things that set them apart from other animated films. And that is what I'd like to talk about. So let's get started. Now, I've been a fan of Miyazaki's work in Studio Ghibli for a long time. One of the first things I saw from their studio was Kiki's Delivery Service. And it's interesting to see a totally different approach to character design as opposed to Disney that we've all grown up with for the last 50, 60 years. This little character, Chiharu from Spirited Away, I'm just looking at some of the design elements on her. Her and Kiki have a similarity in that they're very simple, but he loves to do things with hair design, Miyazaki does, that draws it apart and gives it its own look, its own universe and autonomy, separate from the classic Disney look. If you compare, these two girls with, say, Belle from Beauty and the Beast, you can see a big difference. I mean, there's so much to unpack with the differences and the similarities in the design sense for both of these studios. I'm just going to focus basically on face, hair, and hands, the treatments of those three elements in, their characters. Now, for instance, Belle, there's a similarity with hands with Disney characters. You start out with a basic block shape, and for Belle, being a very feminine look for a hand, and you'd see some indication of fingernails. And when I look at the hands done by Studio Ghibli, it's not that much different, actually. It's funny. Miyazaki loves to do things that haven't been exhibited before with hand gestures. Disney can be very classical oriented, but I think Miyazaki likes to go into a little more realism where the fingers might be doing something different. If you took this pose and did a Miyazaki treatment of it, you might have fingers that are just accentuated in a different way, in a way you haven't seen maybe in a Disney film. It's just a subtle little difference, and I'm noticing it here from Spirited Away, the way the fingers are placed. And another thing, too, is if you notice the hand like on Belle here, it's one color, and Miyazaki loves to go in for contour and shading on a character to give it extra depth and perspective. Just a little extra touch. He does that with his faces, and he does that with, what the character is wearing in their costume and in apparel. He loves that extra little textural detail. Now, in the hair, for instance, if we look at Belle and we look at Kiki, for instance, two big differences there are shape versus texture. So here we have a breaking up of her bangs. He loves the idea of texture. I'll draw Kiki's hair. Here's her basic face shape, head shape. Got the ribbon in the back. It loves to break up the hair. Now, the hair follows kind of a nice contour. In other words, it's just not up and down action that's going on with these bangs, with these little locks that are hanging down or over her forehead. There is a kind of a spiral pattern that's nice that he follows and gives a rhythm to the texture. And then just a few broken hair patterns on this side. In the face, he loves to just indicate lightly an eye. In other words, he'll leave lines out and just put a white color and a flesh tone next to it without having to clearly define the entire eye as they do with a Disney character, like here with Belle. Just two different approaches, letting lines suggest a particular shape while omitting other constructive lines around the eye. There's her eyebrows, little nose, mouth. And so we have this texture treatment right here. Now, with Belle, we are shape-oriented. So we have Belle's forehead, cheek. Her basic shape follows a definite pattern that is shared with a lot of Disney heroines. Snow White, a little bit of Jasmine, Elsa from Frozen. But the formula for this character on her hair is we have a shape. We have the hair pulled back up from the forehead, and then one strand hanging down, and then a large mass of hair that's pulled back around over the ears. Very full and fleshy lips. But that head shape from the side, let's see, the forehead, their nose, that gives something for the animator to figure out how it turns. So the animator that designed this was thinking in terms of how do I interpret that shape as it turns. So that's just an interesting aspect about that. And also, like I was saying with Kiki's eyes, lines are omitted to suggest a certain shape for the eye. And with Disney, they get very explicit with the detail. And it works because Disney's created a universe that allows this design to work. Fully sculpted, fully linear eyes that not only define that eye shape, but gives depth to the character of Belle. And same with Kiki. With Kiki, a universe has been built around the style and design that Miyazaki has created, a whole graphic universe. And that graphic universe is very important. It supports the character design, the design of the props, the design of the costumes. Everything is working off of that design element that has been created. She also has a great big beautiful bow in her hair too. There's a couple of things right there. Now, when we get into overall facial design, I have a character that I worked on years ago on a movie called Atlantis, the Lost Empire. Milo Thatch. And he has, he went through his own design metamorphosis also. He started out a little bit rounder, but we had a visitor from the outside who came in and gave us as a consultant, gave us a different drawing universe where it was very angular. So with Milo, it's almost like the shape of a top that you start out with. Eye line. And the eyes. And then a jawline. Nose and eyes. It took me a while to kind of get used to this. But once I did, I loved it. It was just very angular. And even the treatment of the hand. So this universal, this graphic design sense that we were given, and it comes off of a comic sense of drawing too, the angularity. The directors, Gary Trousdale and Kurt Wise, and the producer Don Hahn wanted to break away from the soft, pretty style of Disney, the Disney musicals that have been done, during the 90s, A Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. They wanted to break away from that. They wanted to have a different type of style that was unique. And so this style lent itself to that. The hard edge angularity. The hands were drawn completely different. So if this was a Disney Heroines hand, our hand for Milo had a great angularity to it. The fingers tapered out towards the ends with triangular fingernails. And everything had an angularity to it. Knuckles, everything. Compare that to what was done earlier. So, in the design sense, once again, was, influencing the props, the layouts, everything about it. What's interesting is I wondered what it would be like if we took the character of Milo Thatch and gave it a Studio Ghibli pass. And what I came up with was this. So we have Milo Disney, Milo Studio Ghibli. Totally different approach, and I kind of based this on what I had seen in a number of its movies like Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, and on and on and on. So I could see that if you took the angularity out of it, it affected not only the facial structure but the hair also. I rounded off the features, simplified it a great deal, rounded off the ears, and created a softer shape for the hair to sit into. Made his neck a little bit longer. I did the Kiki treatment on the eyes where I just left out lines. There's his eyebrows. The hair had a part down the center, and I did a curl of hair with a little bit of texture, and did a very simple return to the ear for the side of the hair. Lock of hair hanging over, and then in the back I created a little sprig of cowlick hair sticking up. And the nose, I rounded it off, but I left lines out. I didn't complete the nose. I purposely left it out. I put just enough construction of the lines so you can read that's a nose. And Miyazaki does that on a lot of his characters. Rounded off the mouth, set the teeth in there, and then I gave shape to the glasses. Instead of it being just a simple circular frame, I gave it shape. So I made it straighter on the top, rounded on the bottom. I brought the collar in a little bit tighter and maybe gave wrinkles to where the buttons attach. He likes those, he puts a lot of those little extra details. He'll leave details out in some areas and put extra detail and textures in other areas. And there's the Miyazaki pass to Milo. Disney, Miyazaki. Disney, Studio Ghibli. Now here's another character that would be interesting to see what a Miyazaki pass would look like. And I'm just improvising on this based on all of the types of Miyazaki films that I've seen and what Disney does in their character design department. So if we took, let's say the Beast. He has a very pronounced snout. And this character was designed by a dear friend and colleague, Glenn Keane. Get the lip treatment, teeth, eyes. There's the horns, massive neck. And then his jaw, lower jaw, and then the beard that comes off of his jaw. There's the dark tones that are underneath the eye to really pop that eye. Okay, so what would the Miyazaki version of this look like? Now, I'm kind of improvising based on what I've seen, but let's just take let's take a stab at it. So I would make these horns a little more pronounced. You know, there is a character that's from Spirited Away that's got a lot of amazing detail. It is Yobaba from Spirited Away. And based on this, I think what I would do is carry some of that idea of texture over here. So I'm going to make the jawline right here a little more pronounced. I'm going to bend the nose over a little bit more. I'm going to pull out the eyes even more. I'm going to make the eyes almost cat-like with cast shadows. And then I'll make the brow a little bit thinner but more wrinkled. Maybe a wart here and there. Let's make the mouth more pronounced. I'll shorten the beard a little bit. There's the lip treatment. Make the mouth much wider. I'll create a snaggle tooth sticking up right here on this side, just on that side. Have some shading over the brow, shading under the nose, shading on this side of the head. He loves to do shading because it suggests, it enhances the shape definition. He's able to push a lip out or a forehead element further to enhance that perspective. If the lip is going way out, he'll cast a shadow that will raise and bring that element, that lip, forward. Now the hair, let's do something that has texture to it with split ends so that the hair is broken up. And then we see his bare neck right there, and then some more hair back here. Warts. Maybe put some detail on the horns. I'm going to grody the bags under his eyes a little bit more. More ogre-like than the Disney version that Glenn designed, which was a beautiful design, but just a different elements. Bringing the eyes further apart, making the mouth wider, bringing the nose down further, sculpting the sides of the cheekbones coming in further and the jaw dropping down a little bit more. I can keep riffing off of this and getting something that would look totally different and, maybe more in keeping with Studio Ghibli. So there's some differences there. I mean, a little bit to unpack, but there's so much more to explore. But those are some of the differences, and nuances that are really fun design-wise between Studio Ghibli, Miyazaki, and Walt Disney Studios.